Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Overstock Dixie. You can go like and follow their Instagram. There's new items that pop up on there every day, multiple times a day. Anything from furniture to tools, electronics, pretty much anything you're looking for. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Derick podcast. We are in the vault today. Something's been kind of cool with the podcast that Mallory and I have been able to do. Those of you who don't know, Mallory actually takes care of really 99% of the Derick podcast. I kind of just come in, sit down, chat with the guest, and she takes care of the rest. If you're interested in doing a podcast or anything, reach out to Blueform. Mallory and Blake are great. And this is one of the guests that Mallory had lined up, so I'm meeting him for the first time today. This is Justin Harwood with Premier Pool and Spa.
Yeah.
How's it going, man? Good. This will be fun. I'm happy to do this with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited about this. So.
Mallory said that in the past you were kind of interested in maybe doing your own or some type of recording.
Yeah, life's just too busy though. It seems like this is hard to do. It's a big production.
St. George pools, man. It would be hard.
It's crazy right now. Pools are booming.
Yeah, all the building going on.
Yep, absolutely.
The Safe Store, that's us. It's like all the hometown St. George people are like, why do people keep moving here? And I'm like, I'm glad they do because it kind of supports my business.
Yeah. I was with my partner today. Actually, we headed out to Virgin. They're building it's called Zion's Auto Camp out there.
Okay.
And we were just looking at all the plates, all the California plates, and we're like, there's a pool.
Yeah, exactly.
Seems like half our customers are from California right now.
Yeah, when we get someone will come in, buy a safe, we get their phone number and address to deliver it. Never are they 435 or like a Utah-based number.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm okay with it though, because I don't know, 7 years ago, 5 years ago, if St. George would have supported the retail store of a safe and vault store like I have now. So it's kind of seeing the cool shift and the pivot that St. George is taking on right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you would consider yourself a serial entrepreneur?
Yeah. Serial entrepreneur.
And you've been doing it your whole life, you were saying, high school?
Yeah, high school, whole life. So in high school, I think it's interesting to think back, like what got you started or excited about entrepreneurship. And my dad worked for a highly successful entrepreneur, but my dad's a CPA or an accountant.
Okay.
So he's probably not the risk taker. He's more of the
calculated
risk, right? Always wanted a day job. When I was getting, I think my sophomore year, he's like, where do you want to go to college? Have you thought about the military? And I just didn't feel right about any of that stuff. And then I read a book going to state wrestling. I remember reading it going up to Moscow, Idaho. It's like a 10-hour bus ride, and it's called Think and Grow Rich. And I think most entrepreneurs have read or know about Think and Grow Rich. And that got me excited about starting a business, taking an idea, finding a service, something to provide to the public, I think is what got me on my entrepreneurship journey. So
that's where it started.
That's where it all started. Yeah, just reading Think and Grow Rich. I'm like, this is what I want to do.
See, for me, it was like going through school. I wanted nothing more to get out of school and go to work. Yeah. And so it was always just like a work ethic, but then it turned into, I started realizing I'm like very opinionated, and I realized I wasn't a great employee with a lot of bosses. Yeah. And so that's where it kind of pivoted for me into entrepreneurship. But I think I never wanted to go to college, never wanted to do any of that. So I kind of feel like it was meant for me, but at the same time, like we had talked before, it comes with its challenges that I'm sure we'll kind of get into.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in high school, I read that book and I was like, okay, what can I do? And I actually started a vending machine business. So I put vending machine business around town in like waiting areas. I went to the mall and put those little bulk candy machines, in their waiting room or their guest where the employees went and stuff like that. So that was kind of one of my first
Just a little route.
Yeah, a little route that I said. And my dad made me do a spreadsheet and calculate all my cost. I'd buy my candy, what I'd sell it for, showed me how to keep track of everything. So that was kind of my first little like, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur in high school, being busy and stuff. I'd go out on Saturdays and fill that up. Yeah. I was making like $500 a month. I thought I was rich.
You're killing it.
Yeah. $500 a month is like loaded in high school.
Yeah. So how big of a help was that having your dad have that background?
I think it's great. I mean, he kind of taught me how to make money, right? To show me this is what it cost. Hey, don't forget gas. You have to drive to each place. What are you spending in gas? Try to keep track of those details. Make sure you're actually really making money at the end of the day.
Right.
So, and he had me do the whole ledger and everything. So
that's great. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I wish more 18, 17-year-old kids would be able to do that and know how to do it.
Yeah.
And teach that in school almost, right?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, one of the things my dad did for me, the machines were kind of expensive. Those big machines were $2,300, I remember.
Okay.
And he actually lent me the money for it at 8% interest.
There you go.
So he charged me interest on his money and I had to make payments to him. And people like, he charged you interest? I'm like, yeah, he's an accountant. He's
Right.
going to get his money plus the interest.
That was mind works, or it wouldn't be a good investment for him.
Exactly. So,
But it's teaching you a life lesson as it goes. I love that.
yeah, absolutely. I
love that, man. So jump into some of the other businesses you did, and then I think we'll kind of spend the bulk of it on a few things I have written down.
Yeah.
But what are some lessons that you kind of learned going through different businesses?
So one of them, I looked at, I went to college. So once I got done with high school and kind of did that, I went on an Lds Mission. I served 2 years down in Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay.
I got back from that, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My dad's like, you should probably go to college. Just try it out, see what you think. And he said he'd help me out. So I went to college for a couple of years, but I just realized it wasn't for me. Kind of like, you don't want to work for, like, would I get a degree to work for somebody? No, I'm going to do my own thing. And so that's when I started looking at opportunities. What's the next step for me? I looked at franchises. I looked at a food restaurant called, it was out of Phoenix, Arizona. I think it's called Samurai Sam's, but I didn't want to buy the franchise. So I actually started my own. So I started a restaurant called Typhoon's Teriyaki Grill. And I remember writing all the recipes. And again, I'm not a cook. I'm just an entrepreneur. So I remember finding recipes, and I remember my grandma came in and said, hey, your salad doesn't taste that good. Let me show you. Here's how you should do it. And so my grandma came in and showed me the mix I should make. And so that became our Oriental salad for our restaurant. So it was a good experience at restaurant. Eventually I ended up franchising it, selling a franchise, and just got way in over my head. Like that's a lot of work to franchise. And eventually I just sold the whole thing off to another restaurateur in town. So
was that in Idaho Falls?
That was in Idaho Falls.
Okay.
Yeah. I rented a space. The location, if anybody's familiar with Idaho Falls, there's a Albertsons, there was a Circuit City. I'm going to date myself a little, Circuit City, Target, the mall. And I was right there on the main drag on the main street right there for my restaurant. It's called Typhoon's Teriyaki Grill. That's the name of it. So
restaurants are hard.
Really hard.
That's a stretch to get into right off the bat, man.
Yeah, really hard. Found an angel investor to invest in it. I remember this is about a year and a half, 2 years in, when I'm realizing I'm working 90 hours a week. And I realized my paycheck, and I was like, I'm making like $2.90 an hour. I could be at McDonald's making $10 at least an hour.
Yeah, and have benefits and everything.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, this is a lot of work for not a lot of money.
The restaurant industry seems to be that way. My brothers had just exited a restaurant in town.
Yeah.
And my brother worked there. Jason, my older brother, worked there. Gosh, they probably had it 10 years. It's 25 Main.
Okay, yeah. I love 25 Main.
Yeah, and so that they had owned that.
Yeah.
And he was working, so he lived with me for a little bit.
Yeah.
And there were nights he didn't come home.
Oh, yeah.
Like he was there all day. I mean, he'd work literally like 40 straight hours.
Oh, yeah. No, it's crazy.
And I thought I worked a lot running a couple businesses, and I'm like, I don't even touch his hours.
Yeah. Luckily, my wife and I were newly married and didn't have kids at that time.
There you go.
We were able to work. I was able to work. She was going to school full time, so we just saw we'd each other at night and like, okay, hello, good night.
Right.
Start over.
Basically roommates.
Yeah. Roommates that we'd see passing in the night, essentially.
Yep. Yeah, we went through the same thing with my wife. She has her master's degree in nursing, so she's a nurse practitioner.
That's awesome.
And yeah, for years it was like we slept next to each other sometimes.
Yeah.
And that was about it.
Yes.
That's part of it. And it's cool that your wife has drive as well.
Yeah.
And understands that where your direction is and where you want to go.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge part, at least for me, it's a huge part that my wife understands it.
Yes. And it's hard too, because sometimes there's ups and there's big downs too.
Yeah.
Being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So after the restaurant, as I was getting out of the restaurant business, the real estate market was booming. I mean, there was developers. My dad was actually developing for the guy that he worked for. And I saw that there was a need for underground utilities, putting in like your wet utilities, your water, your sewer. So I started a company with a buddy of mine where we would put in all the utilities for developers. So we did that at Idaho Falls. We came down here and did some work in St. George. In fact, the Sand Hollow Golf Course, we actually did all the mass excavation out there.
Wow.
Where we blasted all those rim holes. And I think it was 3 million yards of sand that we brought into those. If you've played golf out there, it's a phenomenal course.
I used to deliver the mail out there.
Really?
I was a mailman for a little bit, but we'll get back on that. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. But we did that. And then in 2007, everybody knows what happened in 2007. I had all this heavy equipment. I mean, we had 30-something employees, and the market just stopped.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find any work for our guys. We had to lay people off. My business partner at the time, I went in the office, and one day he said, I'm not feeling good. I said, dude, you need to go see the doctor. And he actually had a stroke in the office. And I actually called 911. I knew I was right by the hospital. So I actually just said, hey, I'll take him to the hospital. And I took him to the hospital, and he didn't make it. He passed away. And so after that,
how old was he?
He was 30. He was 30 years old at the time. And I was the same. I mean, I was the same age. So this is 16 years ago that that's all happened. And dude, that was a rough time in my life as an entrepreneur. Like, not only did I lose my business partner, but the economy took everything, right? And that's when you have to file bankruptcy. And that's not a fun thing to do for anybody, I don't think, but I think it's a rite of passage almost as an entrepreneur to go through that bankruptcy process. And losing everything was a mental, I mean, that just, for a year, like, do I go work for somebody? What do I do? You know what I mean? Do I keep on this entrepreneur journey that I know I'm meant to be on? Or what do I do? And you get lost for a little bit there. It took, I think I laid on the couch for 6 months, depressed, like just not knowing what to do. So rough time. Yeah. Rough time.
And is your wife working during all that? Or is she still in school?
She was. Or? We just had a baby. Like, we literally just had a baby during all that. My daughter was born, 2008. So right as we're going that, we had a kid. And it's interesting. Luckily I had good friends and good neighbors. One of them was a psychologist, and he said, hey, he pulled me aside one day and just, hey, if I cut you, what would you do? I was like, stop the bleeding. He's like, dude, I've known you for quite a while. You've got to stop the bleeding. You're in a bad place. I don't know if you need to go see a doctor. I don't know what you got to do, but you got to get out of your funk, essentially. And that kind of helped me to realize, oh, I am suffering here. Sure. I need to get back on the horse and start going. So
it's a turning point.
Turning point. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So.
And then, so what happened after that? Where'd you go from there?
So I actually went and got a job for about, I think, a year. I worked at a gym, actually, called Anytime Fitness. Okay. And I think that helped because I was in a gym. I was working out. You start to get those endorphins. You start to feel good about life. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it again. And I was going to open a gym, actually. Those guys that I worked for said, hey, let's partner up. Let's do this gym thing. And so we were looking at locations, and I just never felt right about it. In fact, we were actually looking at a location out in Hurricane, Utah. We're up in Idaho at the time. Okay. And they said, hey, let's do Hurricane, Utah. They own 14 franchise rights. And we went to do it, but we had the building lined up. I had everything lined up, but I just did not feel right about it at all. And so I didn't do it. And that's actually when I decided to go do summer sales. Okay. So I actually went and knocked doors in Las Vegas, Nevada in 2009. The worst economy, highest foreclosure rate, highest unemployment rate. And I'm going here to work. And I'm like, is this even possible? And my buddy's like, hey, the bugs don't know there's a recession, you know? So,
good point.
But I went down there. Yeah. I was like, okay, let's do this. And I went down there and had a lot of success that first year. And it kind of got me my confidence back. I credit that summer to getting my confidence back. So
talking to people, being able to sell.
Yes.
Having some wins.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I moved my whole family to Vegas, and I didn't sell anything for the first week. Oof. It was rough. So you want to talk about luckily my wife is more mentally tough than me. I mean, I came home after that week, like in tears, like literally like I made the wrong decision. This isn't right for us. Luckily my wife said, hey, there's obviously there's people doing this, right? She's like, maybe you should follow someone around. Maybe you should watch what they do. So I went and watched the guy that was selling, and it kind of all clicked for me, right? And then I picked it up, and then I was just off to the races after that. I figured it out. I had one of my best summers. I mean, just great summer, and became the top sales rep in the whole company.
Nice.
Yeah, out there summer. So I found my success. I did it in about 4 or 5 months. I kind of was addicted to that job because you could work your guts out for a short amount of time and make a lot of money. Yeah. I think I made about 50 grand my first summer. Then I 75 grand, then made over 100 grand in that 5 to 6 month period doing door-to-door sales. And I loved it because as an entrepreneur, I could go do other stuff during the year. So I did that for 12 years. In fact, I didn't sell that. So I did it for a couple of years for different businesses. I worked for a guy for 2 years, then worked for another company, and then I started my own pest control door-to-door.
So how does that work? So you don't own the pest control company, or just like a third-party sales place, or
So the company I work for, you're just a contractor. Like they 1099 you as essentially they're buying the accounts from you. They're paying you a commission, and you're only getting off what you eat. What you get paid off what you sell, essentially. Right. So like
you don't sell anything.
You don't make anything. You don't make anything. Yeah, that's why it's a rough job, because it's 100% commission based. And so I worked for that company for 2 years. I went to North Carolina for a year with another company. And at that point I decided, hey, I've got to start my own. It was kind of like you're self-employed because you worked and you went out and made money based off what you were doing and stuff. But I decided that 4th year, it's time to start my own. And that was in 2012. Okay. I was like, okay, time to start my own. And I opened my office in Denver, Colorado. So I just started my own office. And then at that point, I owned the business with a business partner who actually funded it all. And he was the same guy that was the gyms. I don't know if you remember, I worked for at the gym. So he's an entrepreneur himself, and also an investor, an angel investor. So he's like, I'll fund you if you come out and partner with me and do this. And so, so that's how I got started in that business. And I did that for 12 years before I sold that.
So if you have a pest control business, I would call your company and say, hey, go out and do some sales for me.
So no, so opposite. So there are some companies that just do the marketing or would just go sell for other companies. We actually would do the sales and the service. Oh, okay. So our play was we would get the customer and we would keep them as long as possible. So we want to make sure that customer is taken care of. So we never sold any accounts or anything. It was all in-house. We treated with really good products because the goal was long-term. We didn't want to make money quick as a company and sell them off. Yeah. That's the salesman's idea, is they want to make money and be done. But as a company, your shift focuses to, we want to keep that customer forever. Okay. So it's interesting because in that business, I was the owner, the salesman. So I had to wear different hats. I had to think about, hey, how do I want to think about this problem or this situation and put on a different hat based off the situation and what was going on there. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Can you kind of run through a little bit? Because there's like the used car salesman side of sales. Yeah. And then there's like actual trying to help people and have a service sales. Yeah. What are some tips that you can kind of run through? I mean, because I own a retail store, right? So even just talking to people about how to sell and having the confidence to do it. Yeah. Do you have any tips or anything to run through?
So I was always one of the top salesmen in the company. And there's a thing called attrition, meaning that if I sold 100 accounts, 10% of those are going to cancel, right? Okay. But my attrition was always really low, one of the lowest in the companies. And sales guys are like, how come your attrition is so low? And I think there's kind of two things in that is, one, I believed in my product and my service. Whatever I'm selling, I got to know that whatever I'm selling is the best. Mm-hmm. Like I did my own research. I knew the products we were using were the most expensive on the market. They work the longest. They last the longest. I had to believe in my product 100%. If there was something that I knew I could do better, I had to do that because I wanted to be the best, right? If you're selling something, you want to be the best. Sure. The second part of that is brutal honesty. 100% honest, 100% of the time, because that's integrity in yourself. And if you believe in your product, you don't have to lie. You don't have to be shady. Brutal honesty. And that's why nobody canceled on me, because I just told people how it was, like brutally. Is this a contract? Absolutely. Just stare them in the eye. Yes. I'm not hiding behind anything, right? Yeah, is this a contract? Absolutely. There's nothing they can say to that. You're just straight up brutally honest to them. And so I think that was part of my success, is just believing in my product and being 100% honest with them. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Like with the store, I mean, that's our thing, is like do the right thing. That's what we try to do. And I have found myself more and more in the last few months saying, hey, just to be transparent, like this is this, and this is why this is better. And it's hard because we sell multiple products and multiple brands, and it's hard to be like, well, yeah, but this one's better and that one's not as good. And so it's like you have to learn what they want and then not necessarily like push them away from the crappier product or whatever word you want to put to it. Yeah. And so sometimes when you're going through with multiple products, it's hard to be like, yeah, this one's not as good and this one is better. Yeah. And when a little advice from us, like big thing we do is just ask questions. Cause maybe that one that in my mind isn't as good does serve the purpose for you. Yeah. And you don't need this one. Yeah. And anyway, I just going through I like to hear different people's stories and the confidence and what they can do to sell, because it's different for everybody and it's different in every market. Yeah. And I'll give you an example even from today. Like even from today I called, what's nice about owning a franchise. So Premier is actually a national-wide franchise, and I'm friends with the guy in Phoenix, and we've been losing sales because other companies are promising shorter time frames to build a pool. Yeah. So I called them and just said, hey, how do you combat this? Like, we're being honest with people. Like, this is what it's taken. There's supply chain issues. Like, we're kind of showing them the 100% what it's going to take to build this pool. And some people are out there promising them 3 to 4 months, and maybe they can do that. I'm not saying they can't, but the reality is most likely they're not going to do that. And he just said, hey, 100% honest, 100% of the time. Like, he's the same way. He said, we had a customer call our gal
and said, hey, I'm eating humble pie. I didn't go with you. I should have gone with you. And he wrote him a review on their Facebook page because he got in a lawsuit. It took over a year and a half to build his pool when the guy told him 3 months or whatever in Phoenix. So he just said, hey, you're going to lose customers, but it's okay, right? You can't sell your integrity. It's not worth anything. So we try to be as honest as we can in everything we do on that. So it's an interesting, the honesty with everybody, I think, creates that integrity, and then more people do business with you because of that.
Yeah, and I want to expound on what you just said a little bit too about losing customers and being okay with it, because that's something I've been learning the last couple of years is there are people out there that aren't my ideal customer. And so in trying to sell 100% of the people that walk through that door, there are some people that I'm like, dude, it's okay if you want to go. I mean, just in my industry, we sell a lot of more higher end products, a lot of American built, even Utah built products.
Yeah.
And so when someone comes in from Sportsman's, Cow Ranch, whatever, and they're a big box Chinese brand, and they come into us wondering, why we're so expensive. And I have to tell them, like, hey, if that's what you're looking for, you're just not our customer, and that's fine. Yeah. Like if you need help delivering that one from that store to your house, let us know. But and I've shocked a few people being like, well, wait, you don't want my business? And I'm like, it's not that. I just don't think I can fulfill your need.
Yeah.
And so like just being honest with the customer, it's okay to lose customers.
Yeah. And in back to door to door, when I was doing door to door, you're going for no to try to find the person that's going to say yes. And I was okay with people canceling right there, knowing that it's like, for example, the contract was kind of a big thing on door to door. Yes, 100%. I'd rather them cancel there than sign them up, think I had a sale, right? That's demoralizing a little bit as a salesman. So the more honest you are, the less demoralized you are, which creates more success. So I think there's a lot to that, just losing customers right then. You're fine with that because you can move on to the person and give them your time, energy, and effort on the people that want to buy from you.
Yeah.
So
I had a pest control door-to-door guy knock on my door the other day.
Yeah.
And I have a guy that I grew up with. It was actually my first visual of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I've told the story about it before, but I mean, I was like 10 at his house and we'd go tent. He does termites too. Yeah. So we would tent houses and he'd do the termites. And then we'd go home that night and I'd stayed at his house for like 3 or 4 nights a week, and cause I'd go work with him all day. And then, he had a son my age. And so we hung out all the time. When we'd be sitting there eating dinner, right after dinner, he'd go sit on his little old computer next to the dinner table and make phone calls for the next day.
Yeah.
And so it was just like my little bit of splash of what entrepreneurship was. Yeah. And anyway, so he does my pest control now.
Yeah.
And this kid comes and knocks on the door and he's hammering me, dude. He's doing a good job. Yeah. He's hammering me and I loved it. I was like, dude, I really love your energy. I love what you're doing. If I didn't have this guy, I would sign up with you right now, but I have, let me, maybe I could be your guy too, and he's hitting me this stuff. And I just grabbed his shoulder and I'm like, dude, I really appreciate it. I just don't want to waste any more of your time. Yeah. Like I'm a no, and I don't want to waste your time.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, man, thanks. And he had this little, one of those little one wheel platform things. And he just buzzes down the sidewalk. And I was just like, good for him, but I was like excited for him. Cause I'm like, dude, you're going to kill it. I'm just not your guy.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to that. It's like, I was that customer being like, dude, I'm just not your target guy. But down the street, there's probably 3 of them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I like to if they had a guy, I'd just be like, okay, enjoy your guy. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I'd be on.
Right.
That's part of learning of that curve. Like,
exactly.
They've got a guy. There's no way. I'd always say, I can't do it for free. So
later. Well, and he's like, well, what does he charge you? What is he with? And I'd tell him and he's like, oh, well, you're going to love this. And I'm like, dude, I love what you're doing. But I was like, but I got to get back to some things and you need to go knock some more doors.
Yeah. I think if anybody wants to develop a great personal communication skill set, door to door is,
sure.
I think you learn in 1 year what it would take 10 years to learn going door to door, because you're talking to thousands of people, right? So I'm a big proponent of going door to door and trying that out, doing it for at least a year. Anybody that wants to be an entrepreneur, I feel like my buddy and I that's partners with me in the pool business, we just said, hey, that's kind of like a school you could send people to that doesn't cost anything, that they get a huge education going door to door for a summer. I mean, it's really a cool industry for someone that's entrepreneur minded. So,
something I don't think we've really ever touched on this podcast, but going on your mission.
Yeah.
I mean, so what did that play a role in the door to door thing, or how did that? I mean, it's kind of idea,
Yeah, you're going door to door. You're selling religion versus another product.
Maybe touch on that if you have parallels between that, or what your thoughts are.
So I think that gave me some of the confidence to go door to door, right? Because on a mission, you leave home, you're somewhere you're not used to, and you're going out and door to door, right? That's the thing. I think part of the success of door to door is you're leaving your comfort zone. and you're creating an environment that you're working hard. And that's what happens on a mission. You know, you leave your home for 2 years and you're in an environment of hard work. Get up, read your scriptures, go talk to people, come back, do it all over again. And that's almost like in door to door. We would leave our home. I've tried to do it in my home community. Doesn't work. You've got too many distractions, right? Family, birthdays, whatever. I mean, there's just a million things going on. So I've tried to even do it here and it just doesn't work door to door because I can't focus.
Makes sense.
So taking them to another city, like a lot of guys go to wherever, they leave their hometown and they put them up in an apartment because then they can create that environment of get up and go work hard and be focused. I think that was part of my success when I started door to door too. Being an entrepreneur, I've got all these ideas and I said, I just need to focus. And it created so I could focus on one thing, right? Because you're in it for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever, and then you're done for the year. So
this is going to be a selfish question for me, but let me get your input on this. So I've ran multiple businesses most of my life. I've had multiple jobs every time. I don't remember the last time I had just one job. Yeah. And my businesses are jobs for me. That's what it is. I've talked about that too. I own a business, but it's all me. I do everything. Yeah. So when you're talking about like focusing on that one thing, my mindset's been, so I'm 33. Yeah. So my mindset's always been like, I can do multiple things. Like, don't put me in your box that you just want to focus on one thing because I can do multiple. Yeah. But I'm almost, without being on record and saying this now, because I've said that to multiple people, I'm almost seeing this pivot now in my mind where I'm like, I'm doing Weapon X holsters. I'm doing Southern Utah Safe and Vault. I own contracts with the post office. We're doing Overstock Dixie. I have all these things every day that I'm bouncing between. And the safe store is really my day job, right? Yeah. But I'm starting to see like, well, man, if I kind of taper down one thing and I can bring up the store a little more and then taper down this thing, or even just shut this down completely and bring up the store more, what success is going to go to that. So do you have thoughts on that? Have you ran multiple things?
I have. And it's interesting because, man, I read something. If you throw enough darts, you'll hit a bullseye, right? Even in a dark room. Sure. Like that was kind of my philosophy, but I think that's wrong a little bit in that I think you've got to focus on one business for a while and get the systems and process, and then you can focus on something else. Does that make sense? Like once you've got it figured out, and I'll kind of give you an example. With the pest control, once I started my own on that, I said, so I worked for a couple companies for a couple of years and then I started my own and I said, I'm just going to focus on this. And I literally turned down opportunity after opportunity and I focused on that till where I felt like I had it at a point that I could do something else. And then I took on some side hustles. Me and my brother did a Christmas light business here in town. I think we had 400 customers or something. Wow. And I sold it to him a few years ago, but I focused on that one business till I got it. And then I could focus on something else. So I think there's some value in focusing on a business for a while. And then, cause we as entrepreneurs look at successful entrepreneurs and they have all these multiple businesses.
On boards and they're on.
Yeah. And my mentor and my partner in that pest control owns hotels and gyms and car auctions. You just name, he's the typical entrepreneur, right? All these businesses. But his advice is I would focus on one business for 5 years and then I would focus on another business. And unless that one wasn't going to be successful, cut bait and move on, right? Yeah. So he was like on a 5-year plan, like give it 5 years and then reevaluate if you want to keep doing this business or do something else, right? Yeah, so I've kind of kept that mentality. And then some other advice he gave me, he's like, it seems like, 2 out of 10, 1 out of 5 businesses are huge successes, like blow up, hugely successful. And the other one's either make money or lose money, right? You've got a couple that lose money, one that maybe breaks even, one that does okay, and then one that's just out of this moon, right? Exactly. Successful. And so
see, that's what I'm starting to see with the safe store. I'm like, man, like I'm here every day, but if I could put all of my energy into it and not having my, have my energy pulled to these other things, I'm like, where could this actually go? Yeah. Because it's 5 times of what any of my other things are. Yeah. And I've had it the least amount of time.
That's interesting. Yeah. I'll tell you about how I got in the pool business then. Okay. Once I sold the door-to-door business, once I got out of that business, my partner bought me out. I didn't know what my next step was. Like, what am I going to do? So I started a lot of business. I got into CBD. I started a crypto company. I started another pest control company, just my own here in town. I had my Christmas light business. I had a dog collar idea where I created this dog collar that you could do a fence on your app, and I was going down that road. I started 10 LLCs, I think, in 1 year.
Yeah.
And then my partner, Rich, I said, hey, with COVID, he lost his job. I said, hey, come to St. George, look at all these things. Oh, I was going to do a food truck. I researched food trucks because I got some restaurant experience, and the top 5 are out of the top 10 or out of top 5, 2 of them are grilled cheese sandwiches. So I'm like, dude, we could do one called, a grilled cheese sandwich truck. We had all kinds of ideas, right?
Yeah.
So I told him to come out here, and I knew my brother built a pool, my neighbor built a pool, and it took him over a year to build. I'm like, dude, we could build a pool quicker than that. Right? I mean, I've got some construction background. He's got some construction background. We know we could do this. So he came out here, and that's how we got in the pool business.
Okay.
Is he came out with his wife and said, yeah, okay, I want to move out here. Looked at all these businesses. He says, I feel good about the pool business. Let's do the pool business. So I said, okay, let's do it. He left, and then I realized I've never built a pool, and neither had he. We probably better, maybe there's a franchise that could teach us, right? And that's how we found Premier Pools and Spas. And they're the largest in the world, phenomenal training, marketing, all that stuff. And so we bought the franchise. And once we bought that franchise, it started taking off so fast. I got rid of all these other businesses. I mean, I literally I'm focused on pools. Like once this hit, we did almost 12 million our first year in the pool business.
Wow.
Yeah. So like you talk from 0 to 12 million is a phenomenal company, right? So I literally knew fairly quickly that I got to get focused. So I sold my Christmas light business to my brother. I got rid of everything else. Some of them I didn't, like the crypto I don't run. That's another partner. So the pest control, I got another partner and said, hey, I'll give you ownership if you'll run this, and I don't have to do anything with it. And so I started getting rid of everything because I wanted to start all those. But people thought I was crazy starting all these businesses, but it was strategic in my mind, in that I wanted to start them and find which one was going to hit. So then I could take it and focus on that one. And it's the pool business. That's what I've been focused on for the last 2 years. And it's going to take 5 years. This is a 5-year plan for me. Let's make this happen.
And you're 2 years in now.
2 years in now. Yeah, on a 5-year plan of all my energy, effort, try to get rid of all my other businesses to make this one successful. So I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, it does. Because I've been struggling with it.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking, well, my biggest fault in it, and I'm sure my pride's really tied to it.
Yeah.
Is like the Weapon X holsters. I built it from nothing in my basement.
Yeah.
And it went from me and a buddy just throwing some parts together and ordering some things on eBay, and figuring it out, watching YouTube videos, and to where we were in, and I've even dialed it back since I've been at the store because I just can't do it all.
Yeah.
But we were in every gun store in town. We had nationwide sales. We had all the, I mean, my truck's got Weapon X holsters across the side of it. I'm like the holster guy in St. George. So from like going to that to think of like just not even doing it anymore.
Yeah.
Or maybe not doing custom things anymore because that's what takes all my time.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been struggling with. Like, well, the results are here. Like if you just look at the numbers, it's cut and dry that this safe store should take all my time.
Yeah.
But it's just a pride thing of like shutting down my baby, I guess, something I've been in 9 years hammering out.
Yeah. It's hard because a lot of stuff's your baby, right? You start it from the ground up, but there's opportunity costs in everything we do. So when we're doing something, could we be more effective over here or make more money over here? Or where do we want to spend our time? And that's the opportunity cost that you're always weighing,
Yeah. And that's been so I appreciate that. I appreciate the insight because I've struggled with it, and I'm on record of being like, dude, just because you can only do pools doesn't mean I only have to do safes. That's what I've talked about with people. And I'm like, great, dude, but you're not me. I can do multiple things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I've done multiple things that we're bringing in. I mean, these numbers aren't accurate, but let's just say you're making 30, 40, 60 grand a year on, 3 or 4 different businesses, but then you do 500,000 with one business or 12 million with one business. Yeah. Like that's probably where your focus should go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And so you kind of realize, hey, and then if I can focus on it, I can get the systems in place and everybody in place to make that run efficiently, So I think part of it is too knowing your weaknesses, like where your strengths are and your weaknesses. Because of the volume of business that we've been able to do, I've been able to hire people for the things I don't want to do, right?
Fill in those.
Yeah. Because as entrepreneurs, we're putting out fires a lot of the time. We've got to manage the fires, but I'm not a good bookkeeper. In fact, I hired my dad. My dad works for me full time.
Nice.
He came in under the idea that he was just going to work a couple days a week. And
Tricked him.
Turned into 40 hours a week full time. Yeah, tricked him, got him on board. He worked for 3 months and said, "Hey, I think you probably should pay me." I think after the third month, he's like,
"I'll see if I can work that in."
Yeah, we'll see if we work that in, Dad. But we did. We actually built a pool for him. He traded out a pool for some
That's
work.
great.
So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I that's one of my struggles and something I'm working through right now. And it's, like I said, if more than anything, it's just a pride hit for me.
Yeah.
Of like, is it really quitting if I'm going to succeed in something else?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even the mail. So I have mail routes, post office routes that I contract from the post office.
Oh, that's awesome.
And for a while there, I wasn't even doing anything with them. So like they're my vehicles, my gas, my insurance. Then I was hiring out drivers and then just 1099 drivers.
Yeah.
And I went maybe like 2 years, not really dealing much with it. The drivers were taking care of all of it. And then I went through like the last year, probably last 9 months, it's just been turnover after turnover after turnover. And so I went from being at the store 5 or 6 days a week to being out in Hurricane delivering mail, 2-3 days a week, and then splitting up and running and delivering safes and installing vault doors and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then right now, my brother that was at the cafe has stepped in and helping me on the routes.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'm like, man, maybe if I just pay him like a management fee, he takes care of it. He's taken care of financially. He's happy.
Yeah.
And then it takes that off my plate.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm starting to like devise, how do I get more time into the store?
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what I did with the pest control is my partner in that. I just said, hey, you take it. I'll give you a piece of the business once it's paid off and debt free and we're making money. I'll give you ownership in that business. And then he bought in and he's taking care of it and haven't had to worry about it. So if you can get someone to buy in to your vision and it's been nice. So there's some ways to do it without having to go out and do it. And
sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, and holsters has been a hard thing because it's like, it's all design. It's all I've learned in 8 or 9 years of how to do these things.
Yeah.
And I've brought some kids in, some younger kids, and tried to teach them how to do it. And I'm like, I just can't expect you to do it like I do it because you've done it for 9 days and I've done it for 9 years, And so it's hard to let that go. But that's probably going to be my next step in business right now is maybe not even shut it down completely, but take a lot of my time off of that to focus on the store. But so anyway, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So since you're in, and we'll get into this too, now that you're doing the pool thing, has it freed you up to get into other things?
So no,
not right now.
Not right now.
Super busy.
Super busy. And the pools I've been focused on it, and it's not at a point where I can look at other opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And opportunities are kind of like buses, right? Just wait, another one's going to come. And so how do we decide what opportunities to take advantage of, right?
I like that.
And so I've in my life just seen, I want to take advantage of all these opportunities, right? And I get ADD and I'm like, squirrel,
do I. Yeah.
Right? What's the next thing? But I always have to tell myself, opportunities are like buses. Just wait, another one's going to come along. And especially as entrepreneurs, we're actively seeking opportunities.
And people are seeking us, it seems.
Yeah, and people are seeking us and trying to pitch us on stuff. And so I have to learn to be patient and pass on a lot of opportunities. And so I looked at an opportunity this last week that looks really good. And so I may do that with a partner if I can bring in the right partner, something that doesn't take away my time and my focus from what I'm already doing. So I think it's okay as long as you can stay focused on what you're doing, because it's really hard with ADD and squirrel and entrepreneurship and hey, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. But I want to stay focused on what I'm doing. If I can do it with another partner, that's how I've been able to grow is with partners. And that's why I've brought partners into businesses too, because we work good together. I know sometimes partnerships are really hard, but I've been fortunate to find really good partners in my businesses.
I mean, I've had one partnership that didn't work in the safe store.
Yeah.
And he went his own way. I kept the business. I mean, it was basically my business. I funded the whole thing. I was working the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then he went his own way and he opened up a store as well. And one of the reps that we were buying product from, I had talked to him about the whole thing. And he was like, the only type of ship that sinks is a partnership. And I just started laughing. And he's like, dude, no, there's obviously ones out there that work. You just have to find the right personality.
Yeah.
And my brother, so I have 3 older brothers. My brother Adam is in town, and he's got 2 partners in their company, and maybe flawless isn't the right word, but I mean, they work really well together.
Yeah.
And they're very honest with each other. They're very upfront
Yeah.
with each other, and it seems to work really well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I just need to search for that person, I guess, that'll work.
Yeah. Because I've had bad partners too that don't work out.
Yeah.
So, or take advantage of the situation, I should say.
Yeah.
So,
I just think I'm, like I was saying with how I work, like bosses didn't love me because I was opinionated and I like to do things my own way.
Yeah.
And having a partner, and some of that I'm sure is immaturity on my side of it.
Yeah.
Like there's things that I need to grow for to maybe be a good partner as well.
Yeah.
But there's things where I'm like, I just don't think I'm a good partner because of A, B, and C.
Yeah.
But it's worked for me singular this whole time.
Yeah.
But to bring a partner in, there's probably some growth that I need to do.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like anything. It's like a marriage. You got to work at it, right?
Yeah.
Partnerships, you got to work at it.
And there's, I was gonna say there's money involved, but I guess there isn't a marriage
yeah,
too.
yeah, goes both ways. So.
Yeah. We touched on the school Pulse thing. I don't want to forget about that.
Yeah, I know.
Let's jump into that.
Yeah. So a neighbor of mine had an idea with here in St. George, we've had some suicides in the high schools, and they were trying to find something that would help the students, what could help. And so he's a counselor here in town, and he had this idea with one of the principals, and they couldn't find anything. And eventually he teamed up with Trent Staley, who's a developer, makes apps. I don't know if you know Trent. He's had a lot of successful businesses, and they developed School Pulse. And so I came on board and said, dude, I love this. I love mental health and mental wellness, and especially the good that does. Like it's such a cool app. So I met with Dixie State, tried to get into Dixie State, and Yuri is the counselor who's involved. Yuri got involved in some of the high schools, got in Desert Hills, and just kind of started doing that. And that was before the pool business. I should have said that was one of the other the businesses I was working on was School Pulse before I bought the franchise. I was over there helping them one day a week is kind of what I was putting into that. And it's a really cool, I don't want to say it an app because it's just straight text messaging to students, and it texts them how they're doing, and it's on a Likert scale of 1 through 4, sad or very sad, somewhat happy or happy. And they hit 1, 2, 3, or 4 and hit send, and it sends back a mental, like, hey, glad you're doing good today. Even if you're doing good, encouraging those people to keep doing good. I'm not doing good. Did you know that if you cleaned out your locker and felt organized, empowered, just like little tips that they give them to help the students along. The cool thing was about that is it actually tracks the mental, that's why it's called School Pulse. It gives them the pulse of the school. It was really cool to see. I guess it wasn't cool, but when they announced they weren't going to do the graduation because of COVID, we sent out our School Pulse into the district, and the seniors, and it was by grade. They would text in their graduation year, so we tracked them by seniors, juniors, or sophomores, and we could see the seniors took a huge dive from averaging like 2.8 to like 1.2, let's say. These are just coming up with stuff.
Sure.
So we actually let the superintendent know, and he made a video and said, hey, this is what we're going to do for graduation. And the next week it'd come back up.
Oh, that's cool.
Their responses would come back up.
And
so
it's like just straight from them.
Yeah, just raw data,
response.
raw data from the students. And so and it's all anonymous too. That's the other thing is,
so are they texting in and like opting into this, or how?
Yeah, they opt in. So they do like an opt-in week or whatever,
Okay.
and they'll opt in, and they just text their graduation year to a phone number, and they opt into the program.
So I mean, how many kids do you think are on this? Well, it's bigger now.
It's huge. So I haven't been involved in it for once I started the pool
stuff.
I kind of moved on, and I'm still an investor in there. I gave them money to help get going and stuff like that. So they're blowing up though. There's newspaper articles, and I mean, if you look on St. George News, they're getting into a lot of schools nationwide. I mean, it started here in St. George, but it's going nationwide. It's going to be a huge deal. I mean, it really is a cool way. They're actually working with where they have counselors on the back end too. And it's what I think is cool is the anonymous part of it.
Yeah.
I think the students engage because they don't know who they are. No one knows who they are.
It's just a number.
It's just a number, yeah. But on the back end, they can actually get a live person if they text anything besides 1, 2, or 4. Let's say this sucks or life sucks or whatever they want to text. Someone will say, hey, this is so-and-so from School Pulse. I don't know who you are, but I'd love to help if you have any problems. They have a live service too that they can offer that was really cool. And I think that was the most cool part about it. Some of the school districts or schools didn't want to do that part, which is fine because it takes a live person. But that's a cool part because it's interactive. They can engage with someone and they can help someone just a couple minutes a day.
I like that.
Yeah, it was really cool deal. So
when I mean, I always say these kids, like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm that old.
Yeah, I know.
But these kids, right? Things are changing. And like when I was in high school, like nobody even would have opted in. I don't think. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people that would. I would think the majority of people wouldn't.
Yeah.
At least like me and my friends, I can't imagine a lot of people would have.
Yeah.
And things are changing.
They are.
But where do you think that comes from?
So
I mean, you've got
here's
kids in high school.
Yeah, I think here part of the cool thing was with Yuri's idea of the school pulse is, I don't know if you remember a few years, there was like, get kids off technology, get them off their phones, right? We know that's not going to happen.
Right.
So let's go where they're at. They're in their phone. So let's get a simple text.
Yeah, let's tap into that.
Let's tap into that and use that for good. And I think was what's so cool about School Pulse. It wasn't trying to get them out of technology. It was just going to where they're at. They're already in their phone. They're already there texting. They're already doing their thing.
When you say it out loud, it seems like no duh.
Right? Yeah, no duh. We should go where they're at, and that's where
Right.
they're at. And so they're already in their phone. It's literally 1, 2, 3, 4 send. It's 2 seconds, right, to do it. And so I think that's why it's having good success with the students. And it's crazy the amount that opted in. I'm trying to think it's been a while since I've been involved, so I can't remember, but they were having huge opt-ins and interactions. Like, I want to say it was up.
To have like responses back and forth.
Yeah, I think like 20 or 30% of the kids were responding every week, which is a huge number. I think like average, it should have been 5% or something, right? But I think it was a huge number of the kids interacting with the platform. So
if people are new to the podcast, a couple years ago, my dad committed suicide. I've talked about it on here. I had my mom on a little bit ago. We kind of went through some of it. Derick Staley that's been on here.
Yeah.
I've mentioned on here. So he's Discount Pawn. Him and his dad own Discount Pawn.
Yeah.
His brother recently, I guess it was December, I believe. His brother had committed suicide. And I mean, we're going to bring him on to talk about it when he gets the minute because he wants to get on and talk about it.
Yeah.
But after that happened, he sent a text out to me and he's like, hey man, I know this is important to you too. I know mental health is important to you too. Like, how would you feel about trying to get into schools, into health class, into assemblies, into something and just talking about it?
Yeah.
And I'm not one to like really, really talk about it, but I thought it was a cool opportunity to get in and talk to, like, I don't even know if I'm meant for a high school, but I'm like, even just get in and talk. And then Nicole, who we'd had on the podcast, who attempted, that's in a wheelchair now and survived. We'd reached out to her and she's like, yeah, I would be in to do something.
Yeah.
So that's when you said that, I was like, oh, maybe that's a resource we can tap into and try and set something up.
Well, and I'll talk to Yuri too. Yuri would do a podcast and just send a little like note, and he'd send out a link to like his little podcast, positive message for the day. So they would do that too once a week with the Likert scale. So there's so many good things you can do with that little School Pulse, right? There's so many things you can do and that's the whole purpose of it, is just to get interaction and try to help, right?
Yeah.
At every level, from very sad. The other thing that it would do, so here's some cool stuff. It's crazy because I haven't talked about it for a while, but let's say someone did sad. They were sad, they're very sad for like 3 weeks in a row. It would trigger that to respond to that person in a different way. So maybe it would put them in a box and you could personally reach out. Hey, I know you've been sad for 3 weeks. Is there anything we can do to help out? Like, that was part of the cool part of the data is, people that have been responding sad for 2 or 3 weeks, and maybe there's something you can do to help them to bump their.
It's not just a preset every time they do it.
But it would flag that. So we don't know they didn't know who anybody is, but maybe they could help that person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there were some cool things in that data that could help someone, that's the whole idea. If it helps one person, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's when, I've talked about it too on the podcast where, like, I pay for all this. I set it up. Well,
Yeah.
Mallory sets up guests and it's all Mallory's gig. I'm just here, but, everyone's like, dude, so you just pay for that out of your pocket? And I'm like, well, yeah, some of the guests that we've brought on and like doing an entrepreneurship one with you, like I've already taken notes and stuff down from what we've talked about. I'm like, if it helps one person, like the whole podcast is worth it to me. Yeah. And I already know I've gotten phone calls, I've gotten text messages, Instagram messages. I've gotten all these things from people.
Yeah.
We had the podcast with Josh and Brittany. He struggled with porn addiction and gambling. And they kind of talked about their 8-year relationship going through all of this. And they're finally getting married and working through it. I had a guy call me and he was about in tears. Telling me about his daughter who was in the same shoes as Josh's wife, and they were getting engaged. And he was like, yeah, I just sent her this podcast and I said, hey, like, your life's your life. I'll support you in whatever you do. I love you in whatever you do, but this is what your life's going to be.
Yeah.
And the next day, the daughter called back and said, hey, I just talked to, I don't know what his name was, Joey, whatever.
Yeah.
I just talked to him, and he's signing up for counseling, and he's going to go try and get help for some of this stuff. And, you know, and he was like, dude, I just want to say thank you for setting this up.
Yeah.
And so going back to the one person thing, it's like, yeah, if any of this helps one person and that stuff, I love it, because it will. And I'm sure it has.
Yeah. And I think as an entrepreneur, like I look back at, I told you about my partner dying, and I mean, I think I had some PTSD from that, not realizing it for years later, right? That, hey, I have anxiety to this day, right? From certain situations, and we all have some sort of mental health issue that we need to deal with on some sort of level. So
I agree.
Yeah.
It's like, mental health is not only wanting to take your life.
Right.
I mean, there are so many levels of it.
Yes.
And I struggle with it.
Yeah.
I've told the story on here about, it was actually right before we started doing the podcast. It was Mother's Day, and I didn't get my wife anything. I was stressed. I had the store, I had all these things piling up. I have a 1.5-year-old boy, and the night before, I think I worked late, and then I went home the next day and had nothing for Mother's Day. And she was kind of like, oh, like I kind of thought I was going to get something, not poking at me, but just kind of like, oh, dude, what happened, And I'm just sitting on the couch, and I just started crying, and I was just like, I'm to the brink. Like, I think I'm going to break.
Yeah.
And like mentally I'm going to snap. And so I sat there and kind of talked through everything with her, and we're both like kind of rocks, really. Like neither of us really complain. We go about our day, we do our things.
Yes.
But I would cry at like movies and stuff, right? But like, just like in life, I was kind of just emotionless as far as that kind of stuff went on. And especially since my son was born, I think I'd cried like twice since my son was born. And so I feel like I was just bottling all this stuff up, and yeah, so everybody, and I'll throw my hat in the ring, everybody struggles with this stuff, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And even starting in I didn't deal with a lot of that stuff in high school, but I know people that did. Yeah. And I know people that never did anything about it, and it got worse. Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, I guess that's my plug. If you're struggling with it, even if you see someone struggling with it, this is another part of it too, is, you'd see people, you don't want to say anything. You don't want to point it out to them. Yeah. I'm like, bag that. Like, if someone needs help, shoot them a text. Yeah.
I know people that post up on Facebook. I'll reach out to them. They're not super close, but hey, if you just need somebody to talk to, like, give me a holler. You know what I mean?
And I think that's even easier than someone you do know.
Yeah. 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 Calling people and reaching out and say, hey, someone's here, to help out if you need it. You know what I mean? Or message them. I do stuff like that just to see someone post and I just want to help. Right. Right. Because we all struggle with it, and maybe it's not talked about like as much as it should be. You know what I mean? So
yeah, when Nicole had attempted suicide, and we have like a 2007 Pineview like Facebook page, and her friend had put up there like, hey, this was Nicole, if you guys didn't know, like the St. George News article about it. And after going through that a year before with my dad, I think the first thing I think I had said like, hey, is anyone doing anything? Do their family need anything? And I wasn't super close with her in school, but I'd just been through it. Yeah. And at the time, they didn't think she was going to make it. Yeah. She shouldn't have, really, if you want to be blunt. And so I was like, does their family need anything? Do they need food? Do they just need a break from the hospital? Like, what do they need? And I think then I sent a message in just saying, guys, like, I just went through this a year ago. Here it is again. We've had 4 or 5 classmates commit suicide. And I'm like, there's a lot of people that I went to school with that I don't know very well. So I'm just a neutral voice. If you need to call someone or text someone, here's my number. Yeah. And then there was 2 or 3 other guys that followed up and just said, yeah, just echoing what Derick said, here's my number. If you're more comfortable with a girl, here's my number. Yeah. And so it was kind of cool to see everyone kind of crowd around that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think that I don't know personally. I would imagine everyone that was like, hey, call me, has been through it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so it's like you almost have to go through it to understand it and be open to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Be down in the dumps so far that you're like, don't realize it. Right.
Yeah. Well, and like you're saying with business and 07 and bankruptcy, like you've been there, you felt it.
And then there's triggers. Like being an entrepreneur, it's like, why am I still beating my head against the wall? Right. Sometimes. Because everything, sometimes you're like, oh crap.
Right. You're like, I've been through this before. I've learned this lesson. Yes. Why am I?
Why I got to learn it 3 or 4 times.
So I've always started businesses from the ground, right? And so I'm curious, you've been in through a few franchises. You've even franchised your own business.
Correct.
Where does that thought process come from? Because I guess it never would have, been a process of mine.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like the pool business specifically, we're looking for knowledge, right? We're looking for something we didn't really know. But I think looking at franchise, you want to see who you're partnering with because they're truly a partner in the business and what have they developed. And when Rich and I first talked, we were thinking we could build 12 pools a year. Like we could do one pool a month, right? Well, then we looked at the franchise and the vision got bigger because that one location, their one location does 1,000 pools a year.
Wow.
And our whole market, I think I looked at our market, was like 700 pools in all of Washington County. So their one location does more than our whole, if I was the only pool builder in St. George, right?
Right.
And they wrote the software for the industry. And they literally had it so organized. It's like, that's what you're buying. You're buying a franchise system, but then you're also partnering with those people. So you got to make sure they're good people. And it felt like family from day one. And what's the cool thing about the franchise, everything they've promised has been true. In fact, it's unbelievable because you hear horror stories of franchises too. Because when you read that document, if you ever read a legal document, they own you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a partner, but sometimes that legal doc says they can change colors. They can make you change your phone number. I mean, I think they own everything essentially. You're working the business or running the business.
Yeah.
So you got to have a good partner, and they are truly good partners at the franchise that I bought. So we got lucky because my partner Rich in the pool business, he's owned a couple franchises where it wasn't so good, and he lost him. He caused him to go bankrupt because of those franchises. They weren't the right fit for him or didn't have the right systems in place, and it just didn't work. They weren't supporting their franchisees from the franchisor. So, yeah, I think franchises are good for people for us, it gave us a bigger vision. So we went from 12 pools to we sold 120 pools in last year in 2021.
So 10x what you were
10x.
at.
It's a 10x, right? But we didn't think we could 10x until we saw what they did, right?
Sure.
We were 12 pools, and then all of a sudden we can 10x this.
When you kind of went from we'll figure it out to here's the layout.
Yeah. And they had integrity in what they said. One thing they do is they do lifetime guarantees on your pool. I'm like, well, wait, we can't do that in St. George. We've got expansive soils and blah, blah, blah. They're like, no, you can. You got to get soils report. You got to make sure, extra rebar. Our pools are 21 times stronger because they do this bond beam differently. Like just all the little trade secrets they gave us. And now I believe in my product. And then I built my own pool the way they said, and it's awesome. Like they use sweeps versus hard nights. Just all these little things. My pool burns 300 watts of power. I think it costs me $15 a month to run my pool. Because you hear these horror stories of, I know it's $400 a month for a power bill. No, not if you plumb it right and do it right. You can save that money. So you can pay for it up front or you pay for it every month. You tell me.
So that's a good point because they've already been through the ups and the downs. They've learned the lessons. They've done all that.
Yeah.
Hey, well, if you do it this way and this way and this way, then you're set.
Yeah. So what you're paying for the franchise is the experience, right? They've been in business since 1988. So we're buying that experience and try not to make those mistakes again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They teach you, and that's their trade secrets, and here's what you shouldn't do, here's what you should do. And I think if it's truly a good franchise, there's value there. And so I felt like, when does a transaction happen? When the value is worth more than your money, right? That's when you buy something.
Sure.
And so I couldn't give my money fast enough. Like I was like, dude, they're a franchise fee. Where do I sign? Where do I give you my money? Like I wanted to give them my money. And the other thing is I have to pay a royalty fee every month, right? I like paying that royalty fee. If I didn't like paying that royalty fee, I bought the wrong franchise.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't mind paying that because the support, what I get, is worth more than the check that I write to those guys every month. So I think that's when you're looking at franchises, the value proposition has got to be huge for you as the franchisee. So
That's a great answer. Like I said, I'd never thought about that, but that brings a lot to the table of here's all the knowledge. Like, here, cut us a check, right? Like, here's your pay us for this knowledge, and you're off and running.
Yeah. And one thing I was looking at when I bought the franchise, Warren Buffett says, buy a business that has an unfair competitive advantage. What is the unfair competitive advantage? So,
unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, let me unpack. So when I looked at the franchise, I love sales and marketing, right? That's kind of what I love. They have a huge lead gen center. I mean, they had full-time person that does the Google algorithm, full-time person that does Facebook marketing, full-time person that does it. I mean, I'd have to hire 4 full-time people to do my own local marketing.
Right.
And they do that all for me. And they promised me leads. They said, we can get you leads. Like we promise you leads. And so that was kind of why I bought it, is they've got the back end system for the marketing. The first day we turned on our leads, in 24 hours, I had 18 leads and all 18 booked appointments. And I called them and said, okay, turn off the leads. Stop whatever you're doing. Like
I'm not set up for
we're
this.
not set up. We're not ready. We are not ready. So I turned it off I didn't pay for any leads for a long time because I just couldn't handle what they can produce more than we can handle.
Got you.
So that's why I bought it, is that's the unfair competitive advantage. I can turn up the spigot or turn down the spigot based off their marketability.
Yeah.
So that's my unfair competitive advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. That's a huge value that you're getting into.
Yeah. They're
more than you can handle.
Yeah, more than you can handle, almost. I mean, it's crazy.
So you've had a few businesses funded. How did you go about finding the partners or the people to come in and fund it?
Yeah. So one thing that I've found is networking with entrepreneurs, right? So my partner in the restaurant business was a local entrepreneur, and he owned lots of businesses. So I took him the idea. Luckily, my dad had taught me how to do pro formas. If anybody doesn't know what a pro forma is, it's essentially the expectations of what the business is going to do financially. So you put all your expenses and all your revenues, and you have a pro forma so that you can present your business idea and say, here's the numbers behind it. And so I had somewhat of a little business plan, but mostly the pro forma is what everybody wants to see. So the other stuff's just fluff, in my opinion.
Sure.
So
I could talk you into it, but here's the numbers.
Yeah, but here's the hard number. That's what they want to see. And so I think putting those pro formas together from day one has kind of been what I've been good at, is building these pro formas to show people, here's what you're investing, and here's what I think it'll do. And so that's how I got my restaurant funded, as an angel investor. Once I lost everything, the entrepreneur that I worked for funded all was the partner that I brought in, and I'd brought him in to show him the business from the outside. Hey, here's what we should do. He decided it was a good idea, and he actually went and started his own in Phoenix. So it was an easy, hey, I want to partner with you now, fund my business. And what's interesting about that is that first year that I started, I think it took $600,000 which is a lot of money to start that business. And we weren't that successful. I mean, in relative, we weren't that successful our first summer. So it was kind of scary, right? You've borrowed all this money, and now you got to pay it all back.
Yeah.
The business does. Luckily, he knew the numbers, I knew the numbers, and knew that it took about 3 years. And I think any business I've ever started has taken about 3 years to get where you start to actually get a little momentum. I don't know if you found the same, Derick, but it just seems like that's kind of
the safe store. So we hit the safe store at the right time, because it was COVID was starting, the election was coming up. Cities were burning, right?
Yeah.
Antifa's running around burning cities down.
Yeah.
And so having that fear kind of drives the safe store. And, and I hate that.
Yeah.
Like, cause I don't want you to buy it off of fear. I want you to buy it off because you need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but just from the climate that was going on.
Yeah.
And I had people that were like, dude, this COVID thing might be serious. Are you sure you want to? And so I'd had the business for 2 years before.
Okay.
The location we're in now.
Yeah.
With the other partner.
Yeah.
And then I'd shut it down, moved everything into a storage unit, and I was like selling stuff out of a storage unit. And I'm sure the manufacturers are like, do we want to stay with this guy?
Yeah.
You know? And then when all that, I was like, okay, I need to get back into this. I've got the mail routes taken care of. I want to open the store back up.
Yeah.
And then COVID was hitting. And so I think that hit March of 2020, around then. And we opened in April.
Okay.
And so everyone was like, you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, I'm all in, dude. I'm all in. And I just, at that point, I felt like I was too far in mentally to back off.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting in. All of that craziness happened that 2020, and we were killing it. I mean, we couldn't bring safes in fast enough. And so I'm kind of diluted on my first 3 years is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And I would call the manufacturers and I'd be like, hey, you know, what are you guys doing for next year? Because it can't possibly stay at this rate, you know? And they're like, oh, and I had one saying, oh, it won't. And I had the other one saying, you guys are going to grow. And, and so I had no projections.
Yeah. So
and so, that would be my answer to your 3 year thing. But I'm hoping in 3 years, I have a more clarity on what we're going to do.
Yeah. So back to the funding, I've been in a lot of with entrepreneur, and I've been in a lot of investors where people are pitching and stuff like that too on it. I think the numbers are important, but I think passion too. Like I've been involved in a couple pitches where the person came in and pitched it, was super passionate. I knew, that my partner didn't invest in it, but I knew it was going to be successful because of how passionate the entrepreneur was that was going through this venture. And they needed a lot of money, like $3 to $5 million type investment. And then I've been in pitches where they didn't need a lot of money, but they weren't passionate at all. And it's like, no, they don't really care. This is just an idea versus they are truly passionate about what they do. And so I think angel investors and even just investors, people, when I give people money, I want to know that they're passionate about what they're doing, right? That School Pulse, those guys Yuri's the most passionate person you'll meet about that. Like he is super passionate. Trent's super passionate about what he does. Like they want to help, they want to do good. Things I invest in, I want to be helpful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people passionate about what they do. So
yeah, that's great. I think we've kind of ran through a lot of it. Is there anything else you want to touch on? Is there anything you want to go through?
I don't think so. I think it's been good.
Kids.
You
want to talk about kids a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got 2 kids. Been married for 22 years.
Wow.
In fact, June of this year is my anniversary. And so you mentioned earlier about forgetting Mother's Day.
Yeah.
When I was doing summer sales, I was so stressed out, so crazy that summer. I was getting ready for the day on the couch. My wife walked out and handed me a card, and I said, "What's this?" It's like, "It's not my birthday. It's not your." She's like, "Maybe you just better open it and find out." I opened up, it was our anniversary.
Oh man. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. Called my brother. He lived in Vegas. Like he came over, watched the kids. We went to dinner that night. But
So you salvaged it a little bit.
I salvaged it. But then what's funny about that is this last year, we both forgot our anniversary.
Oh, there you go.
She was out of town, happened to be out of town, and she called me the next day. You realize what yesterday was? I'm like, oh, it was our anniversary.
You're all Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. Yeah, exactly. So it was just funny been married 22 years, got 2 kids, a 17-year-old, and my daughter will be 14 this Saturday. So yeah, fun. I come from a family of 4 boys, so living with girls is
different.
A little different than 4 boys. So
I see 3 older brothers, little sister. When I heard we were having a boy, I was jacked.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
I'm like, I did have a little sister, but I don't know much about girls.
Yeah.
I guess I married one, but
yeah. Same.
yeah. So yeah, I was pretty jacked to have a boy, but maybe we shouldn't say this, but so Will was a handful in the beginning, and my wife and I she's works for the trauma surgeon in orthopedics.
Yeah.
And so she's on call all the time.
Yeah.
They have all the crazy stuff. She works crazy hours. It's rare if I do 12 hours a day. I'm usually over that. And so having a kid is just crazy to throw into the mix.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting here debating on, do you do another kid? Can we handle time-wise another kid?
Yeah.
So what was your thought going through some of that stuff? Did you have any struggles with it, or were you all in on 2?
I think I was all in, yeah. And my wife's she's my rock. Like my wife is just rock solid. I'm the crazy one, right?
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah. So I think you have to have someone that's just grounded. My wife's just grounded and gets it, and better than me in every way.
Sure.
So
they tend to be that way.
Yeah. And
when you got a good one.
Yeah. And so 2 years ago is when I started this pool business, and my wife decided she wanted to get her master's degree at the same time. So I think the last 2 years have been a little crazy in our lives. Like luckily our kids are at that stage in life where they can feed themselves. My daughter Lily's got my gene of she gets hangry. So she calls me as soon as she's hungry. In fact, yesterday she called me like, "Dad, I'm hungry. I need a sandwich." So she called me 3 times. Then my wife texted me, "Lily needs to be fed." She'd called me 4 more times. She'd called me 7 times in 30 minutes. So I ran and got food and took it home to her, right? So
that's awesome.
I know when the kids need to be fed, and I can get the kids fed. And
See, I never understood hangry until I met my wife.
Yeah. My kids have it. I have it though. I get hangry too. So, but my kids are good. And it's fun working with your kids too. Lily, my daughter, she was sad that I sold my Christmas light business because she'd get up on the roof. She loved to go hang Christmas lights with me when I hung Christmas lights. And I've got her in the pool business. I've got her kind of designing stuff. She's only going to be 14, so she's not, but she's learned the software. She knows how to do 3D rendering.
Awesome.
So I want to get the kids involved. I think that's part of owning a business is you
100%.
want to work with your family or your kids. My business partner, Rich, has got boys. So his sons work for us. Like one of his sons, our crew boss. So it's fun to be a family business. I think that's really important, right? You want to work with your family. You want to be around your family. And that's why we do this, is for lifestyle. And it's afforded us the opportunity to hang out together, go snowboarding, go on trips, all the things that you want to do.
That's what you guys enjoy, snowboarding? Is that
kind
of your thing?
Yeah, Brian Head. Yeah, and we went up to Powder Mountain this year. We've done a few things. It's got kids all snowboards. They've been having a good time this year with the snowboarding.
I'm not super into that. I love, so we have an acre in Duck Creek.
Yeah.
I love Duck Creek.
Yes.
I'm not a huge snow fan. Well, you guys are from Idaho, so you're used to that.
Yeah, a little bit. We've acclimated down here.
See, but my wife, she's rock climbing, mountain biking, snowboarding, all that stuff. And I'm always like, well, I think Will's going to get, if he gets that, he's getting it from you because he's not going to get it from me.
Yeah.
But my whole family's all like traditional sports. And then her whole family's like, I don't know what you call it, outdoors type sports, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it'll be interesting to see kind of what he naturally gravitates to.
Yeah.
Of course, I've got like he goes climbing and biking with her now at 1.5.
Yeah.
But
that's
we've got
awesome.
the basketball hoop and stuff in the living room, and he's learning balls and footballs. And
yeah, that's awesome. My kids that climbing, they have that climbing gym too. That's, I don't know if you guys have been to
Contact.
Yeah, Contact.
I've never been there, but she has a membership.
Yeah, so my kids love that. They go there, they get climbing gear. I think when they opened 2 years ago, we got them
That
some
sounds
climbing
right.
gear, and they love it too.
So are they new to it?
Yeah, they're new to
Okay.
They're new to it, so they like it. And
Yeah, so her family's like, my mother-in-law's, dude, she's all over the place. She's awesome. She's, well, I was going to say her age, but maybe she'll get mad at me if I do.
Better not.
But she hangs with all of us.
Yeah.
I mean, us in our 20s and 30s, she hangs with all of us. And when I first met the family, 10, 11 years ago, like the first few things we did was canyons.
Yeah.
And so we're rappelling like 200 feet into a canyon. And I'm like, I don't love heights.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to put myself in the position to be.
You and me. I hate heights too.
Yeah. And I remember being like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this, and they didn't tell me that there's 200-foot drop.
Yeah.
And so we roll up to like the first opening of the canyon, and I'm looking down and I'm like, there's got to be another way into this thing. And they're like, well, we've never done this one, so we want to do this one. And so at the time, her youngest brother would have been 10. And so they like rig him up, dude, and he just zips down it. And I'm like, well, I can't not do it now.
Yeah.
and so I went down it, and we get about 20 feet down the little walkway into the canyon, and there's like a 20-foot rappel. And I'm like, well, what's that right there? And they're like, oh, we did that one last time. We wanted to do the big one. I'm like, thanks a lot.
Appreciate that.
That's how they've always been. Like, I think I'd been to Zion one time before I met my in-laws. And they were there all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I never done Angel's Landing. I did it with them.
So I'm scared of heights, so I don't do Angel's Landing. But my wife's done it a few times.
It's because I really don't like heights. It's not that, well, of course I just stared at my shoes the whole time, right? But
look down.
just hold on to the chain and just go. But like Observation Point we did with them.
Oh, yeah.
So have you done that one?
Yeah, I've done observation. We've done a lot of the hikes.
Okay.
In fact, my wife and I have done rim to rim in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
We hike over, stay the night. She's done rim to rim to rim to whatever. She likes to.
It is.
Yeah, I'll do it one time. I thought I was going to die.
You're like, I've done it. Check.
Yeah, check mark.
We did Observation Point, and I was like, is this thing ever going to end? And you get up to the top, we're eating lunch, and my mother-in-law comes to sit next to me, and I'm very money driven. So she comes and sits next to me, and she's like, and maybe we weren't married then. I don't remember. And she's like, now, wasn't that so like satisfying to do that? And I was like, no, like now I got to go back down, And I'm like, you want to entice me? Like put $100 bill up here and I might come and do it.
Yeah.
And then right when I was kind of complaining, joking, this California condor comes flying right up the face of the cliff.
Oh, that's awesome.
And flies right up in front of us. And we were all kind of like, whoa, kind of took us off. And then it just hovered like 10 feet above us. Oh, and you could like give us tagged, you could read the number on the tag and everything. It was cool.
That's awesome.
And so I kind of turned to her and I'm like, all right, you got me. That's worth it.
Yeah, it was worth it.
No, but I've had fun with my in-laws. They're just into a lot of different things than I am. And it's hard to keep up with them a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like my wife and her brother, well, they did one trip to Portugal, Spain, my wife and her brother went to Italy, and I'm like, go to Italy, see the Colosseum, eat some pizza and pasta.
Yeah.
Not them, dude. They go and like climb the mountains and do all these like Via Ferretas up in the mountains. And I'm
Sounds
like, it's
like
just
my
not my
life.
speed, man.
Yeah. When I go on vacation, I want to, where are we eating at? That's like the goal, right?
Exactly.
For me, I'm a foodie, so I got to know where we're eating.
Yeah. Like we went to Vegas just a couple weekends ago just to get out of town. And I had pneumonia and I got really sick, and so that weekend we just left. And the first night we ate at like a Mexican restaurant in the resort. And then I'm like, where are we eating tomorrow,
Yeah.
And we go to like Target and she buys groceries. And I'm like, hey, that's like half the reason of coming down here. I want to go eat somewhere.
Yeah, I got to eat some food.
Yeah, it's funny. That's my thing for sure, is where we're going to eat.
Totally.
Yeah. Families are different, man. It's fun. I guess when I say it's different, it's like there's so many personalities grouped into one
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you just try to make the wheels keep spinning and keep moving forward.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, we're almost an hour and a half. So
Yeah. It's awesome.
that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
dude. Well, appreciate it. Thanks
Yeah.
for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Derick. This is
Glad
awesome.
it's a cool experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Great. Never done this before. So
People get kind of nervous, and I'm like, it's not that bad. Once we start going, we just roll.
Yeah. It's
So,
way cool. Way
so
cool.
yeah, thanks for coming. Episode 42.
42,
So we're
awesome.
coming up on a year. So
That's
that's
awesome.
That's crazy. Anyway, guys, make sure you go comment, review, share. You know, if you have someone that wants to get into entrepreneurship, maybe start their own businesses, maybe understand what you're getting into, you know, some of the mental health side of it. Make sure you share this one. It was a great podcast that we brought this week, and we'll be here next week. We're starting to post these on Saturday. So if you go click the subscribe, it'll just notify you when we pop them in on Saturday. So we'll see you next week.